in the South Bronx, and I'm sitting with Carla, a woman from Honduras, and her 1-year-old daughter is sitting on my lap, and she's pulling apart these pink Post-its. And we're looking at my computer, and Carla is telling me that there's a photo on Facebook that I need to see. And so we're looking up this Facebook profile of this man I'll call Nelson. And Carla tells me the photo is in his profile. So we get to his profile, and I see a photo of Nelson, and he's a young man, and he's holding a samurai sword like this. Click. And then I see a photo of Nelson, and he's got a black mask on his face, and he's holding a pistol at the camera like this. Click. And then I see a photo of a 9-year-old girl, and she's got braids. She's about the same age as my son, and she's holding a pistol. And there's a comment from Nelson, and it says, "Had to be my daughter, ha ha ha." Click. And then I see the photo that Carla wants me to see. And it's Carla, and she's standing in this room with these dirty white walls, and she's standing behind Nelson, and there's a table. He's sitting at a table, and there's bottles of malt liquor, and he's got cash in one hand, and he's holding a machine gun in another, and Carla's standing behind him. And I say to her, "Where was this taken?" And she says, "That's in Mexico." And I'm confused because Carla has fled from Honduras. She's fled Nelson with her daughter. She's left with her daughter and her sister, and I don't understand what they're doing in Mexico. And she tells me that this photo was taken after she and her daughter and her sister were standing by the railroad tracks waiting for the train to come by. And they were grabbed by these men, and they had bags thrown over their heads, and they were thrown onto a train. And when they took the bags off, there was Nelson standing there. And they were taken to this drop house, and that's where this photo was taken. And that this is the place where Nelson took from her what he had taken from her back in Honduras. But this time she didn't scream because she didn't want to scare her daughter. And I'm looking at this photo, and we have Carla's asylum hearing in about a month, and I think, this is our smoking gun. And then 2 weeks later, the Trump administration removes the domestic violence protections for asylum seekers for women who suffer gender-based violence. And everything goes poof. For the last 12 years, I've been representing people who are seeking safety. I've been representing them to get orders of protection, to get custody of their children. I've been helping them to get green cards when they're married to abusive US citizens. For the past 5 years, my colleagues and I have been representing a growing number of Central Americans who are coming here, fleeing people like Nelson. We've been representing women and children and LGBT folks who are fleeing the kind of violence, unimaginable violence. And for the past 2.5 years, my colleagues and I have been watching the protections that we built for decades be stripped away one by one. Like last week, when a judge upheld the Trump administration's migrant protection protocols policy, which is really that if you come to the border and you ask for asylum, you can go through the process, but you have to do it in Mexico to get asylum in the US from a US judge. And what do I hold on to? What do I hold on to in this dark time? Well, what do I hold on to when I'm getting dressed literally in the dark, and I'm getting dressed in the dark because I don't want to wake up my husband, and I don't want to wake up my children, and I have to go to immigration court, and I have to stand up, and I have to make an argument. I hold on to this idea that I didn't have words for until last week when a social worker in my office did a training on interviewing trauma survivors, and she gave me the language that I didn't have the words for, but I had seen play out over and over again. She told me about this concept called post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth is this idea where opportunities are built and growth created, new things are seen. And we are yelling in the streets, and we are beating back the effects of the trauma that we see every day, and we are fighting. And Carla is fighting, and I see it in Carla. And I see how Carla comes from Honduras, where a woman is killed every 16 hours, and where someone reports sexual abuse every 3 hours in a country the size of Ohio. And I see it, we are fighting institutional violence right now. I am fighting institutional violence, my colleagues, Melanie's fighting institutional violence every day. But telling stories, getting our stories out there, listening to Carla tell an immigration judge what she had done and how she had said, no, I will not take this anymore, and she had left. Watching that judge hold that picture in his hand of that young girl looking at a photo. And that judge and I and Carla and everybody in that courtroom knew what would happen if that judge had sent Carla back. The new law be damned, the new case be damned. And he didn't send her back, and she got her asylum for herself and her daughter. And it's the speaking out, right? It's when we speak out and people who are traumatized by interpersonal violence, by institutional violence, when they speak out, that post-traumatic growth, that is limitless.